Hey everybody, I'm back to continue the discussion I've been having about the visionary slips and the events surrounding that. And it's such a long story, so I'm just hoping you've been watching my videos. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, all the videos on my playlist labeled the JodyVision, and I've also created a playlist if you want to hit that and go through those if you haven't been following. Basically, I've been experiencing parallel dimensional timeline or visionary state throughout my life, and in my last story I've been telling about the time in early November. I skipped almost 3 months from November 2nd of 99 to January 27 of 2000, and I was there till maybe about the first week in June. I can't really pinpoint the date, but I kind of have a reason why I've been able to figure out those exact dates, and so I explained all that in my last video, how I know. And then there's the time in between. So basically, where I left off in my last story is after having been in the future, I woke up to, it was like a bright flash, but it was kind of soft. It wasn't like a painfully bright flash. And I knew all at once that I had just time traveled, and I know I had been gone for quite a long time. And that's when my friend, one of my acquaintances anyways, not a good friend, but just somebody named Mark, came over to smoke a bowl with me, and I let him in and we started talking. And then he said something like, no, you've been gone a long time, like, you've been gone like 4 months or so. And I'm like, no, I haven't, I've been right here. But in ways it seemed like much of what just happened slipped my memory, slipped my mind, but I was still a little bit confused. Like somehow, like the last thing I could remember for some reason was maybe towards the end of February of 2000. My friend Jeremy and I were going out and working for this temp agency that sends us to like banquets and stuff, and so I might have mentioned what's the date? Isn't it like February 23rd or something? He goes, no, Jody, it's November 2nd, and so I must have been in visionary state for just a little bit after I came back to November, but then I came back into normal reality, back to the regular timeline that we're all in. And so that's what makes this such a difficult story, is when I do one of these time slips, it blends in so well. It's hard to tell the difference between here and there. And so as I read like some time ago, I think before I turned 18, and I had that moment where I'm like, I might be going to visionary state, it's because you don't know what's happening till later most of the time. And that's why it's so ironic. There's some stories I told in some of my past few videos where I'm in the visionary state, and so my friend Jason and Rosie both educated me about the visionary state during visionary state. And especially when I was talking to Jason, I could not believe it. I mean, I was in visionary state. I was being told that I'm in visionary state, and I could not believe it. That's how well it blends in with reality. So I think this is one of my best discoveries, and so nothing new under the sun. Again, there's other people who do this. There's plenty of movies and stories about this this type of phenomena that are super popular, and you probably know a few of them. Bible prophecies, and in fact, going to oracles and visionary state experiences are a big part of human history. So it's nothing new under the sun. But to me, a major discovery, because I knew you could have prophetic dreams. I knew you could have astral projection and stuff like that, but I didn't know that I could do this. And to top it all off, I didn't know I was doing this from 1982 to 2000. This had been happening the whole time, so it's like a huge slap in the face to get woken up all at once that, oh my God, this has been happening right under my nose and I didn't even know it. So after I came back and to the regular timeline with everybody else, I felt like something's just really weird, and like, so my dad's Christmas present to me would be to fly me down to Key West to see him during Christmas and New Year. So we've been visiting with each other regularly. I think 96, I went to see him in Key West, but then 97, I had him come to Denver for Christmas. 98, I went down there for Christmas, and then 99. So that's like, then seems like my trips got further apart, like, and the older I got, the less I needed my daddy. Anyways, no, but those are some really great times, and I'm really glad we made those trips. So this is an excellent Christmas present to me. But I was feeling really scared because like I knew something weird was going on, and so I was paranoid for a number of reasons. And didn't really want to go to Key West, to be honest. I thought it'd be safer for me to just stay put. I I asked my friend Lynn if he wanted to go, and he couldn't go. And I asked my friend Chris if he wanted to go. And I think the tickets were affordable enough. My dad actually bought the plane ticket for me and my friend Chris to make a round trip down there and back. And so we had our headset on going down to Key West and doing Christmas and the New Year's, and so it would be 99 into 2000, big old Y2K. So there's a lot of hype around Y2K. People worried about the computer system shutting down and who knows what, like maybe a nuclear war will break out because of it, right? So there's a lot of crazy ideas were going around, and I was one of the people laughing at anybody worried about merely flipping a page on a calendar. Like, get over it, dude. We're gonna go from one year to the next, one day to the next, and I don't understand why people are making such a big whoop-de-fuck about it. But I was warned earlier by my friend Blaine. He said that I'm gonna have an epic, going into the New Year's was gonna be I would start to see some paranormal stuff starting to happen, So that's right. Blaine mentioned that, by the way. And so, anyways, there was this warehouse party coming up. And my friend Chris was living nearby with a girl who was going to college for the music business, like maybe she wanted to become a promoter, and so she was tied in with some people like this guy named what was his name? Christian Howard was a local promoter, and he was putting on this big party. And you had to wear a costume or else like pay full price. So like I saved $10 by wearing a costume. And so so the reason I wanted to go is I heard Bill Lee was in town and he was going to be at this party. And I thought, well, maybe I should go to this party to try to pay Bill a visit, And so I didn't want my friend Chris to know I was going. I was really going to just try to sneak off and go to this party by myself. So I told him, I don't know if I really want to go to that party. But he came over the night of the party, and I was in there putting makeup on, and I just painted my face white, and I wore like a cool long sleeve band t-shirt for, I don't know, was it Sister Machine Gun? Oh yeah, it was Sister Machine Gun. And then I just painted my face, and I was just kind of like this wicked clown type of thing. I don't know. I gave myself a little triangle, kind of like it was a bright triangle, but I was also kind of like maybe a wacky little warrior being, because when I went to this party, I did have a pretty good time. Some of the music was really good, and I was out there dancing and stuff, and then there was like a live band that was pretty good, so I was slam dancing with some guys, and I got into a little tussle with a couple of punk boys that were trying to slam people to the ground, and they tried slamming me to the ground a couple times. Like one was like swinging his friend, and his friend had his elbow out like this, and they were swinging his friend at me, and it knocked me pretty far, but I kind of rooted down into a good horse stance and kept my balance. So they tried me a couple times, and they tried somebody else, and they had a pretty big guy sliding across the floor doing that same thing. So next time I took those guys, I kind of sidestepped them, and then I just pressed, like almost like Pakwa, kind of, closed the door and pushed the moon, and both of the guys went stumbling, and I threw two guys off balance. Boy, were they mad at me. And anyways, that's a really funny story about being in that little tussle with those guys. But anyways, it was just an interesting night, and so I was looking around for Bill Lee, and I noticed this upstairs area after a while. Thinking, I wonder if I should go up there and ask about it. And so I went up and said, I was looking for, Chris Peterson or Bill Lieb, and they said, oh, come on in. At first they weren't going to let me in, but when I said who I was looking for, they're like, oh, come on in, and they let me up there. And so I started walking across. It was this really cool, like, upper level with a balcony, and there seemed to be one room where a lot of people were hanging out, and the bar room looked more like whoever lived there had a bedroom up there, and who knows, maybe they lived there. So I remember talking about in one of my earlier conversations, somebody told me I'm going to go to this warehouse party where I'm going to see bicycles hanging from the ceiling, and this was the place. And I saw this tall guy with spiky hair, but he was so far away I couldn't really tell who he was. Like, he could have easily been Bill Lee for all we know. But he had on this big jacket. It was kind of like red colored, but with a lot of paisley on it, and maybe some red pants. I'm just thinking that can't be Bill Lee, but this guy was looking right at me, and he goes, "I love you. You're so precious to me." And he seemed to be kind of nervous and rocking back and forth like this, you know. And I saw that guy saying that and looking right at me, and I could just feel his vibes. It was so intense, you know. And I wasn't really like on anything, you know. I was pretty sober if I hadn't smoked just a little puff of weed, maybe. But it wasn't like I was tripping or anything. I mean, when I seen this guy looking at me and I felt that vibe, I'm just like, who is that man, you know? Like, it, you know, I mean, I just couldn't believe it would be Bill, you know, because the way he was dressed and everything, and he looked really young too. So, like I was saying, it was poor lighting. It was hard to tell who this guy is. So it's kind of like a Cinderella story. Like, who was that guy? Because you know, I saw him standing by the edge, you know, by the railing, you know, looking out over the dance floor, and so I tried to come up and stand side by side to him and give him a chance to talk to me, you know, because I wanted to find out who he is. And just then, my friend Chris Smith, you know, he managed to catch me getting dressed for the party, so he ended up coming with us, right? And then Chris Smith was down there like, Jody, I need to talk to you. Now, I almost forgot when we first got to that party, we found Chris's friend, and so me, Chris, and April all talking to the guy that's throwing the party. This guy's name was Christian, and he's the one that he says he's a good friend of Chris Peterson and that Bill Lee was around here somewhere. But then he tells the girl that he's, you know, he's kind of like working with her because she's a student, you know, of becoming a promoter. And he's like, you know, you're bringing too many people up to me. So it seemed like he wasn't able to help me because he didn't want, you know, to involve Chris, you know. So if he was like, I was wondering in after the fact if this was something where, you know, Christian was going to help put me together with Bill Lee, you know, and give me an opportunity to make a connection. But because Chris was there interrupting, you know, I wasn't able to get that connection. So it was one of those things, you know, that made me wonder if I would have went there by myself, how it would have been different. And then, so standing next to this guy looked pretty similar to Bill, but wasn't too sure. I really wanted to check him up, but then Chris was right there going, Jody, I need to talk to you. And then, so he told me something about these guys are trying to give him a ride home, but he doesn't want to take their offer. It might not be a ride home. It might be, who knows, so they're going to try to kidnap him. So he was kind of scared, and he really wanted to get us the heck out of there. So, so we got going at the end of the night. We kind of stayed to the end of the party, and I couldn't find Bill Lee. I did see this big tall guy with, it looked like this fancy wig with purple braids and stuff and all that, and that's who I was told was Bill Lee. So later on, I got a chance to talk to that guy, Christian. I said I was looking all over for the guy, and I didn't see him anywhere. Well, he was that guy with the purple wig on. It's like, oh no, I saw him, and I didn't recognize him. It was a pretty good disguise. So he was up a set of stairs that had a little chain that said, I don't know if it was just a chain or if it said do not enter, but it was where they were having the private party. And if I had gone up there, I would have found Bill Lee, and I said something, you know, like, you know, Chris lost his wallet at that party, you know, so I had, you know, this guy on the phone asking him, you know, like about this party. Like I was looking for Bill Lee, and he was the guy with the purple wig on. I said something to Chris like, did you see that big tall guy with the purple wig on? And Chris said, yeah. You know, him and a couple guys came up and asked me for my wallet, you know, and then that's the last time I seen him. But then later on, you know, I said that it was Bill Lee, and he was just like, oh. And so I think I brought it up later on, and it seemed like it was my mistake. He said, no, it never happened, you know. So when I asked him if the guy with the purple wig asked for his wallet, he said it never happened. But it's another thing where I'm wondering if there's this visionary slip. It gave me the idea that those people threatened Chris when he was worried about getting this ride home. Those were the people offering him the ride home. They took away his wallet. And so I'm not sure if somebody, you know, robbed Chris or if he just accidentally dropped it at this party. But it really sucked because it had the last of his money in it, and we were getting ready to go to Key West to see my dad, you know. And so this was one of those stories where I'm like, I didn't ask him about the tall guy wearing the paisley jacket, so it's like, well, You know, Billy was walking around in this purple wig, and he had a different colored jacket. It was, I forget what kind of jacket it was, but it was certainly wasn't the red paisley jacket. So, and he was in another part of the building, and so yeah, I might have caught a glimpse of him at this party. But that's just one of those things, you know, uh, where I'm just wondering, like, was this guy Christian Howard supposed to help me find Bill Lieb, or did Chris blow it by interrupting and be like, yeah, yeah, where's Bill Lieb? He wanted to see him too, you know. So who knows? I mean, that's a good question. So, anyways, I was dealing with that and going to the and getting ready to go to Key West, and I'm just like stressed out. Like, you know, I just really wonder what's going on with this Bill Lieb stuff. I was starting to remember. I don't know how long I started catching on that I remembered Bill Lieb from growing up. That's kind of what had me set out to meet him in the first place. And then there were like vague memories of people trying to give me hints or reminders, you know, so like it was still kind of vague, like it wasn't really all sinking in quite yet. So like when I look at this place in my timeline, um, it makes it like it's not really believable yet, you know. So I'm still kind of curious about that guy from the party. But anyways, I was just being frustrated, and I happen to have this really nice piece of jade that Master Tay gave me. My kung fu teacher would give me some nice gifts sometimes, and I thought this piece of jade was really nice. It was like a red and white one, and he wrote in a letter. It's very rare to get these, you know, so I was hanging on to it. It was meant to be a bracelet, but what I did is I put leather uh, lace, and I just made a basic knot around it and just wore it over my heart, and I just did a prayer with it. So it's kind of like, you know, kind of a bit of a talisman, but I tried to use prayer and ask, you know, my guiding spirits, you know. So yeah, I guess I'm kooky enough to think like that, right? To tell me, you know, help me resolve this issue. Like, why have I been compelled to go introduce myself to this guy Bill Lieb and have all this trouble? It's been really making my life frustrating, and I wanted my spirit guides to help me understand, you know, why is this happening to me so much? So I put this on my heart because I was hoping that I could bring wisdom down from the from above and help, you know, to resolve the issues of my heart, because this is a passion issue, this is a heart issue, and I knew that something needed to be done. So I'm still trying to sort out, why is this happening? And I had a really good dream that I felt like I was a disembodied being, you know, just kind of like a mist floating along, and I saw a little boy. It seemed like he was in his own dream state on a stage with some basic lighting, and it looked like it might have been Billy. Billy had a bass guitar, like a little square, you know, those kind with the square body and the neck that has no end on it. I don't know what those are called, but there is such a thing. He had a little black one, and he was wearing it strapped over his shoulder. And he threw his hands in the air and he says, I want to make music. And that's all I could remember, just kind of drifting up and seeing who I remembered to be my little friend Billy from growing up. Looked like, yeah, like he was on his imaginary stage, you know, looked like he was in, you know, in the dreamscape or something, when he just shouted out that I want to make music. And I was there to see that, you know, and I thought, huh. So it started to help trigger my memory more and more about Billy, you know. So the reason this is happening is because maybe somehow I made contact with Billy on the spirit plane. Is that the answer? So that could be part of the answer. Maybe before I was born and I was disembodied, I had to take a reincarnation where I'm going to cross paths with this individual, right? So who knows? So that's kind of delusional kind of thinking, but that's the dream I was given. And I think it is interesting that I put that jade ring on. And I thought about that. I thought, you know, I really want some answers. And so that's kind of part of the answer, you know. So, anyways, I wanted to mention that before I go to Key West. Man, like, I think we land in Miami and drive down the Florida Keys typically. And so, another funky thing that happened before I made the trip to Key West was that I was sitting up all night with my friend Jeremy, And we were getting some pretty good acid, you know. It wasn't really junky acid. I felt like you know, like a good trip is really clean. You don't feel crappy and stuff. So it gives you an immense state of clarity. I was sitting there chatting with Jeremy. You know, we'd been up all night and into the sunrise. And I was talking about how, you know, how I'm experiencing this cross cultural experience by being in the martial arts and connecting me with the East. You know, I feel like it's given me kind of a certain element there. And then the connection I feel with my music is more of a Western culture thing, and it's kind of given me an element there that is compatible with the my Eastern training, you know. So there's sort of the spiritual and the intellectual, and I was going like this, and I moved my hand, and he saw like this square hole, and my hand went behind it, and there was sort of a flash that I saw out of the corner of my eye. So I seen the flash out of the corner of my eye, and he's like, Jody, your hand just disappeared. There was a square hole, and I saw your hand move behind it. But it did seem like I was making an interesting comment, you know. So it was like maybe I was having an important realization of how my life is going, and that's when I created that funky open window, and that's where you could say, well, you guys were just tripping, you know. Well, me, my dad, and Chris, you know, like one of the first things we did when we got the chance was to smoke a joint together. And so we were talking together and passing this joint around together. And it seemed like I had it in my peripheral vision, and I don't know what I was saying. I must have said something. I wish I could remember if there was something I was saying. But I was talking and just had it right out here where I could see my peripheral vision, and I saw this white. It was more like a bluish flash. It's almost white but bluish, very similar to when my hand went behind that hole. So I saw that same flash, and my friend Chris was the one supposed to receive the joint. And he goes, Jody, what happened to the joint? Where did it go? So the joint disappeared, and we couldn't find it anywhere. So we searched the whole area where we're hanging out. There was no joint, and we never seen it again. You know, there was a time before we had a similar experience. We were passing a joint someplace and dropped it, and we thought it disappeared, but then we found it later. It wasn't like that. It was a joint like at least between a quarter to a third long. We'd smoked most of it, thankfully. Whew. But it was makes me cough just thinking about it. But there was such a good piece of that joint left. There was no way in hell, you know, it had to have disappeared. We'd never seen it again. But I just love that story because it seems like, okay, so maybe this portal's opening up around me. Maybe there's something about me that you know, like I'm dealing with that, you know, that shift, but I'm not in control of it. Like I was able to make that magical doorway open, and I accidentally lost that joint. And you know, I've had a couple of other instances where things disappear and never come back, and I think, boy, I sure hope I don't do that to something important like my keys or my wallet, you know, because you know, if I can make things disappear, I really hope that they will reappear and come back. So that's kind of scary. But that is something that I was starting to become paranoid about. So it could have also been the spirit world telling me to be mindful about, you know, smoking pot, because it's still not legal, and you really don't want to get caught with it and get put in jail on your vacation, you know, while you're away from home. So, right. So I wanted to bring that up because that ties in the long run. So, now, since I got to my dad's house, we had a pretty good visit there, you know. I'm just trying to put in perspective where it all falls in. So, something that almost slipped my mind. So I have to go back to 1998. I went down to see my dad. You know, so this time I went by myself, and so while I was down there, one of the visionary slips I had, I was kind of packing up and getting ready to leave. So I shared that one about the book my dad was reading. So it was like jam-packed with information. And I'm sure I've only shared part of that because I know like a lot of it surfaces as things happen. I'm like, oh, I remember when my dad said this, or I remember when Jason said this, or so-and-so said that. And so it was kind of scary. Like, how did these people know? Right? So that type of thing. And so anyways, yeah, so back in 98, I'd had that phone call from Rosie where she shouldn't have had my number. Now, Jessica, my sister, I don't know if she should have had my number or not, but it was similar. I think I still had that phone line. Before I made the trip to Key West in 98, I got a call, and she asked me If I remembered Billy, she said he still loves me and he wants to marry me, and something about him dropping off a truckload of cherries at my grandma's, you know. So I went down to see my dad in 98, and I went out and took a nap on the couch in the side room. And that's when I went into a visionary slip where I woke up in Christmas the very next year. So I'm in Christmas 98, waking up in Christmas 99 at my grandma's house. I come walking out and I see Chris Smith there. I'm like, Chris, how did you get here? And he goes, well, I flew down and we landed in Miami and then we drove down to Florida Keys. Don't you remember? And then there, I saw all the chocolate covered cherries. Now, in reality, those were for my Uncle Charlie, but I didn't know that yet, right? So I'm in visionary state. I see all those chocolate cherries sitting there, chocolate covered cherries. So lots of boxes of chocolate covered cherries. And I'm pretty sure my dad said, Jody, somebody wants to marry you. So you connect my sister calling up saying somebody wants to marry me and leaving these cherries here. And then go to visionary state, like, what are you doing here, Chris? I don't remember how long that lasted or where that wrapped up at. But then when I'm down here in 99 in reality, you know, I kind of had a flashback on that a little bit just because, you know, I did see all those cherries and I started realizing, I think I've been here before, but the conversation about me getting married never happened. So nobody said that to me. But I think before we flew to Key West, my neighbor up the hall, the one I mentioned before, it seemed like this is somebody who I was told probably that book my dad was reading. So I had these people up the hall that their dad owned a record company and they were part of the music business. So earlier I was saying I almost thought I saw Bernard Sumner from New Order at her house a little bit later on. So, but it just seemed like these people seemed to know something too. And it's like the very first time I came to Denver, I connected with her brother David. These are the people who connected with me with Rosie. So these people helped make me so many connections. I started thinking that there was already something set up for me, like they knew I was coming and so on and so forth. So I started getting these kind of delusional thoughts that everybody knows what's going on but me. But it's just funny how one day Amy came by and she just like dropped in just for a moment and said, Jody, somebody wants to marry you. And then, so now I'm down in Key West. I'm kind of flashing back on this cherry thing and somebody going, Jody, somebody wants to marry you. Now, we did watch that movie, The Fifth Element, so I told a whole story about that in my last video. So that was one of those things that made me starting to worry a little bit about had somebody come into my dad's house and planted this video. So it's something I sort of put on the back burner. But then it was New Year's Day. So New Year's Day, we were hanging out at my dad's girlfriend's house. And so it was getting to be evening time. And I think there was a lot of paranoia in there, like the whole country was nervous, and I could hear the neighbor was out in front of his house praying to God, you know, that nothing crazy happens tonight and stuff like that. And so I was feeling the nervousness of the night. It was kind of funny how what happened was like there was so much tension in the air. And so, you know, me and my friend Chris were tripping on some more of that good acid. And so I felt like it just really opened me up and I could feel the air around me. Like I could tell the whole country was nervous. And as soon as New Year's was over and nothing bad happened, I could feel all of that go. So the New Year's was pretty stressful all as it stands, but then I had my own personal issues. So I'm just sitting there. I had my feet up, and my dad's girlfriend Dale comes over and she starts cracking my toes, and she goes, "So Jody, what do you think about getting married?" And I'm thinking, what is she talking about? And I'm like, I don't know what I said to her, but I started feeling like this was another one of those people trying to tell me somebody wants to marry me. And so I started getting really nervous and I just wanted to go home to my dad's house. And so my dad's like, I ain't giving you the keys to my car, you're tripping on acid. and then Dale kind of slipped me her key. She happened to have one of his car keys on her key ring. And she let me take his car anyway. So I snuck out with Chris and we got in his car and drove all the way home. And I drove as perfectly as possible, right? Like I think I did a really good job. Thankfully there was no traffic and we didn't see anyone out there. And we had to drive from Key West to Big Coppet. So when I parked the car and we got out, Chris said, "You know what? That was perfect job. It didn't look, you didn't do a single thing wrong." And we were listening to Skinny Puppy the whole way, and it's like, I was trying so hard to focus and try to make sure we didn't get any trouble, but at the same time the music, it just sounded like it was playing inside out. It seemed like there were different layers of the music that I've never heard before. Like, it was very intense listening to it, and I can't even think which album was, so it kind of ruins my story, but it was probably something they did in the 80s, and just, these people are truly psychedelic, and, with all this going on and all this stress, I was able to just kind of like, I did a perfect job driving, so, by the way, but once I got home, I started to really start to worry, because I realized, I had this old friend named Nathan, so I went over his dad's house and ended up talking to him, and Nathan wasn't around, but his dad was kind of cool to talk to, and I think I mentioned to him I was looking for some pot, and he said he could get me some pot, it'd be $50, so I got the pot, and I didn't have any cash, and he's like, well, here, just take it with you and bring me the cash later. And so I had this pot that I was supposed to pay him for, and before I went back to pay him, I started remembering all these awful things, like, if I don't remember right, so I used to hang out with Nathan, like, maybe that last year before I left the Florida Keys. And so Nathan and we got really drunk together, right? So he was supposedly 18, and I don't know if I was 17 or 18, right around that age, but he was supposedly not over 21, but he would pull right up to the liquor store, and they would sell him the booze right out the window because he could grow a beard, right? So it seemed like, we were both kind of being naughty together, but I somewhat remembered him saying his dad could be an undercover cop, that his family's originally from Detroit, Michigan, and he knew a little bit about industrial music and stuff, so we kind of bonded over that. And when we went to get drunk that night, he had this friend named Donna that was a promoter, so I'm kind of wondering if this is the same lady that I met in Denver or not, or if it was somebody similar. But again, he got me so drunk and had sex with me and all this stuff, and so I just, if there's any chance that he was part of SWAT or his dad or anything, because there was kind of a SWAT program in Key West where they tried to get students involved, so they're kind of professional. They're learning to be tattletales, and maybe people that are going to become police officers later, right? So, so at this point I started remembering, like, oh shit, what if this is, a setup and I'm going to go to jail? So I was kind of worried, like, if I go pay him for that pot, I might get arrested, So I'm like, man, I really wish I had a better memory of shit, and so I went over there to pay him. It was too early in the morning, but I figured, if I take the 50 and slip it under the door, then if he's not a cop, then I know I've paid him and I did my part as an honest, in an honest trade. But at the same time, if he is a cop, maybe I could pay, I'm not going to get arrested because I'm not going to be here. But I was looking through the window and I saw these two little boys with blonde hair, and now Nathan told me about those two little boys in that someday, his dad's going to marry somebody else, and they're going to have a different set of children living there. So it was kind of freaky, like I started remembering things and starting to put things together. So anyways, me and Chris got back from that trip from Dale's house, and I was freaking out. I'm like, and he's like, what's the matter, Jody? What's the matter? I'm like, oh my God, like, I was just thinking I really fucked up, And so Chris went outside and he was pacing around, and I was in the bathroom. I heard footsteps, so I got super paranoid. I didn't know it was him. I thought, what if the cops are coming, man? What if I'm going to jail, So I took the pot and flushed it down the toilet. I flushed it down the toilet. So I think my dad told me, because I told him what I'd done, and he said, Jody, if you're that paranoid, you really need to stop, because maybe what he's thinking is I'm getting paranoid for a good reason. Maybe I do feel like I've gone too far and stuff like that. And so, where I was living at the Acacia building, I had been warned by the landlord that they could tell I'm smoking pot in there. So there's, there is a half a chance they've reported me, and there's a half a chance I've been investigated. So it's, I think I have reasonable concern to think, if I was doing something like smoking pot while it's illegal, there's a half a chance I have attracted the attention of undercover detectives, so. But in this case, it was probably just paranoia, and maybe there was nothing to worry about. But I think we got to smoke some of that pot before I got rid of it, thankfully. But it was a good amount of pot for $50 to flush down a toilet. I really felt bad later, thinking if I was in no trouble, I certainly wasted a good bag of pot. So that really sucks, actually. So anyways, yeah, so seeing that joint disappear, I kind of wondered if that was a warning to, about this situation coming up and to be more careful. So I think I did try to quit smoking pot for a little bit because my dad, I think my grandma told my dad to order me to quit smoking pot or they're going to quit, they're going to cut me off and quit helping me. So this is how they're going to straighten me out. So let me see what I've got down here. Now, when I got back from this trip, I had a really bad case of the flu, so I don't know. Sometimes when you travel, you're getting exposed to germs in different parts of the country, and so I was really sick also. I got really, really sick, and I just couldn't work. I tried taking a job at Subway, and I just thought, maybe I'm over it. Maybe I could work now. But it's like my torso was hurting so bad. I told the owner or the manager lady, I said, listen, I need to get off my feet for just a little bit. I said, I think I'm kind of sick and I need to rest and then go back to work. And she said, well, if you feel sick, you need to go home and don't come back till you get a doctor's notice. I wasn't working very much. So again, very stressful period of time where I don't have an income, but I was living with Lynn and Jeremy. And so the three of us were able to keep the rent paid. And I think they were losing their patience with me a little bit because I wasn't working that much. And all this Bill Lee stuff was coming together. So I want to talk about a couple more things in this period of this window of time between where I left off and came back. So I guess I really wanted to talk about, let me see here, when I agreed to go to Key West, I already knew something weird was going on, right? And I just couldn't put my finger on it. But then there was that party coming up, and that's where I went and saw that guy. It's kind of funny because I think I even had a dream about something like that. I had this weird dream that, of course, all dreams are weird. I had this strange dream, that's redundant. All dreams are strange. Anyways, I had this dream that I went to the Cafe Netherworld. That's where, I had those bad experiences at the after party. Say I went to see FLA and it was a bad experience. But in my dream, it was like we were at the at that place and it had different tables and chairs, which they would end up getting later too. And then I would see Bill Leap standing there holding this white fluffy cat, and he was petting it, saying, "Oh, you're so precious to me, and I love you so much." And then the next phase, he was just handing me a big stack of CDs and stuff, like giving me all the music I could ever want, right? So it was such a nice dream about Bill Leap. So I had that dream before I went to that party. So I saw that guy standing there with the spiky blonde hair. He looked like he kind of an attractive guy, even though he was kind of off in a distance. I couldn't distinguish who he was, but he was looking right at me and he was saying, "Oh, you're so precious to me. I love you so much." It was like those exact same words. And that's where I kind of wondered, oh, I wonder if that was Bill Leap or not. And so maybe not. I could have probably just went to a visionary slip. Maybe it wasn't even him, right? But man, just when I got up next to him, then Chris came along and interrupted me. And then let me see. So I saw a couple spooky things where I moved my hand and I saw that flash, that joint disappearing. I wonder if that was, kind of warning me, hey, watch out. We don't want you to go to jail, Jody. My angels want to keep me out of jail so I can keep doing my spiritual work, right? Ha! So I put that jade ring on that Master Tay gave me. I thought that jade ring might help me answer my question. So basic magic, using talismans and objects. This is like old magic, and new magic, you shouldn't need a talisman. So I guess, that's kind of old-fashioned to me, right? And I told my dad, I said, I feel like some weird stuff is going on. And he goes, well, maybe it has something to do with that talisman you're wearing, because he noticed I had that jade ring under my shirt. Oh, maybe it has something to do with that talisman you're wearing, he say. So being in my dad's house, that's when I saw Fifth Element. I thought I saw a video of me and my friend Jeremy flipping off some big wig up at the Colorado State Capitol, like they're warning me, like, we know where your dad lives, and they knew the future. We get some footage from the future, sent it into the past even. Super spooky. Then I had a flashback on Christmas. I was from 98 to 99, having my dad in the parallel dimensional timeline ask me, he told me, Jody, somebody wants to marry you, but in reality, he did not. So this is what I would notice going to the future and coming back. In the parallel dimensional timeline, people tell me shit, but then in reality, those conversations don't happen, but I still remember them when I get up to those points. Then there was the Y2K tension. I think a lot of people around the world were scared. There were just a lot of crazy conspiracy theories and stuff that didn't come true. And so sometimes, we can really pollute the psychic air with that type of stuff. So that's what people need to understand, is that we're kind of broadcasting stuff, and the air around us has like an energetic body, and we fill it like with all of this broadcasting, and it gets in the airwaves. So so maybe there was a cute little lesson. So Y2K was an exciting transition to start a whole new millennium. And by the way, Frontline Assembly has an album called Millennium, but then again, so does Eminem. A whole bunch of people love that phrase or that term. Ooh, it's a whole new millennium. And so with the new millennium, there's so many prophecies about things that are going to happen in the new millennium. Like 2012 came and gone, and the world didn't. And now 2024, they're starting to think, oh, 2024, they think, I don't know why, that some prophecies are supposed to unfold this year. Now, thing about the flu is, I'd say 10 years later, 2010, I had a really bad case of pneumonia when I was at the other end of some of these visionary time travel trips. So I wonder if the flu had anything to do with breaking me down, but it was just a major inconvenience. It was really messing with me. And then I was to discover that I had an upstairs neighbor named Baldus Van Vieren, and that this might be a connection to Bill Lieb. And so in my next video, I want to talk a little bit about how I was receiving information that was being sent from the future back to the past to kind of build up this narrative. And actually, it's so embarrassing how I was tricked into thinking that Bill Lieb might be living in my building, and I was tricked into thinking that Bill Lieb might be interested in marrying me someday. Now, I'm not a dummy, okay? I'm not normally this gullible, but that's why I'm telling these stories. It's like there's so many things that go into the work being done to trick my mind. So that might be how the lesson was being dealt to me. So I'm supposed to become aware that, you can go to visionary time, the visionary state, that time travel, at least in the visionary state, is possible. And so I'm getting an education, but whoever's dealing me this education also has a really messed up sense of humor. So I think I appreciate it now that it's in hindsight, but in the middle of it, it was super embarrassing, and I felt like it made the people around me think I'm crazy. And I think that's exactly what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to give us that experience. And it really helps me to separate, who knows what they're talking about from who don't know who they're talking about. So I've had to learn, you can take confirmation for some places, but I really have to learn to stop taking confirmation from other people or depending on it too much, and learning to find my own confirmation, right? So I think that's what this is a lot about, to do with the learning discernment. Like, again, today's hot topic is, our Bible prophecies coming true? Well, I know one thing. You can have prophetic visions and you can see glimpses of the future, but it's not always accurate and useful, apparently. And you gotta watch out for who you're communicating with, that there are good spirits and bad spirits, and there are spirits that are trying to get your energy, this type of thing. So I want to say I'm very grateful that I've discovered the visionary state experience, but it's almost like it's been a curse at the same time. So I had this joke, the Billy curse, and I'm like, okay, that traces back to when I was going to the convalescent center. I forgot all about this, and my great grandma said not to laugh at. There was a lady in a straitjacket, and she was just yelling for somebody named Billy. She said, "Don't laugh, you might end up like her." So ironically, I kept saying, this must be the Billy curse. Like, me thinking I had this old friend named Billy has just really set me up for a bad time. So anyways, that I think covers, coming back to November 2nd, kind of getting through that trip to my dad's house for Christmas. But then coming back, I had a really bad case of the flu. And then after I discovered Baldus Van Vieren upstairs and started thinking maybe Bill Lieb is around, this is when I started thinking, okay, so people have been trying to tell me to expect Bill Lieb, and he might actually be living right here in the building. There's an album that was made in '99, I think, if you look on the back, that they went to a studio in Denver as well. So they were physically in Denver, but in the visionary state, I was being told they were Denver, and I should have had no way of knowing. So a lot of cool things about receiving information that's remote to me. So it's it could be kind of a boring story because it's too personal, it has a lot of details. But if we step back and look at it, the ultimate message here is boom, you can go into the parallel dimensional timeline. You can see the future, and information from the future can be taken to the past, and all this good stuff. It can be done. Ha! So let's see here. Anyways, you guys, I'm so sorry. I kind of pause and think a minute because I tend to leave stuff out. But I'm gonna do another video talking about this part of my life. 99 into 2000. I think for me it was an epic experience, and it was a lot weirder than I expected. I just thought it was gonna be another day, so maybe it's just a coincidence. But for me, I had a very strange 99 into 2000 experience. So you guys, hopefully have a good day, and hopefully 22/4 isn't as scary as they're saying it's going to be, because people just love drama. So just keep smiling and do your best. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you soon.